mean, my wife is definitely not one of a truth seeker, but normally atheist people are generally knowledgeable. I mean, they know a bit about everything, whether it be science or any kind of religion or whatever. They know a bit about everything.
I don't think that's true either, but I'll let you keep going.
So when, like in those situations where you are towards the very end, I mean, and you are confronting death, I would assume that a rational brain, unless they like the idea that life ends and that's it, that they would probably think of supernatural, whether it be...
Why do you think that's rational? Here, it's really simple. I have a brain that doesn't like the idea that I'm going to die. And when I'm dying, what reason would I have to spend time contemplating? I realize that it does happen. What rational reason would I have to waste time contemplating something that I don't think exists? If I'm rational, wouldn't I spend that time in a way that's more productive? Perhaps thinking about the parts of life that I enjoyed, thinking about the parts of life that I enjoyed, thinking about loved ones, or saying, oh, wow, I'm actually going to die. Let's see what happens. Hello?
So, yeah, I'm here. So the position that you're taking, that you like the idea that life just ends.
No.
We never said that. I mean,
to some extent.
No, but what I'm saying is,
to some extent,
in
yes.
those final seconds,
to some extent, yes.
I would think it's not just rational, but probably by instinct, a human brain would think about supernatural things, whether it be floating through a wormhole or going to be reincarnated or going. Yep.
Stop. You have no idea what rational means. You've just equated instinct with rational.
Well, no, I didn't. I was.
Yeah, you did.
I was saying rational, really, but I'm trying to paint the picture that I think a brain, if they don't like the idea, that it would automatically.
We can't keep going over this, Steve.
About supernatural things.
Yeah,
Steve, we can't keep going over this. There's other callers waiting.
All right.
He's saying the same thing over and over.
Cool. Thanks a lot for calling, though.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah. I agree it happens. Not necessarily that it's rational. I wanted a rational reason. Of course, I wanted a rational reason to change my beliefs, and all I can get is I like it better. Okay.
Well, and I knew when I told that story, it's like he's going to look at this, he's going to say, oh, no, but you weren't.
Yeah, you weren't quite there.
You weren't quite there. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the guy behind you was.
Yeah.
And instead of me thinking about whether or not I'm hitting power lines, I'd have been saying, would you shut the hell up? I'm trying to save our butts.
Yeah, fortunately, I couldn't hear him over the...
Yeah, it's very good.
The engine noise. So.
Pray quietly. I'm trying to think here.
Yeah, he wasn't transmitting his prayers. So.
We put prayer closets in the back of helicopters now. We've got John. It says King of Prussia.
Yeah.
Is that a real place?
It's around Valley Forge, close to Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah, awesome. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for calling.
Hi. Yeah, thanks. I'm calling a friend wanted me to sort of try out an argument that I have for the existence of like a human soul, the spirit having like reason, free will, and consciousness.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, reason, free will, and consciousness, that's 3 big ones.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But I wanted to try to just make a few points briefly, if that's okay.
Okay.
Just about like my understanding of the idea from earlier in the show where like religion and the poverty thing, how they correlate to each other. I personally think that it is more like being in that state will lead you more to an awareness of your dependence on God and not vice versa. I think like the fact that there's poverty in a lot of those areas is due to like soil infertility, population density, the fact that they didn't have the same resources and inventors from the Industrial Revolution, things like that.
Okay, that's one of 2 takes on it. My question to that is, you're convinced that it's poverty that leads people to these more religious positions.
I think that's one factor that can be.
Sure. My follow-up question is, do you think that has any ties to whether or not those religions are true?
I don't really think so, but I wasn't really planning to go there.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to check. Yeah. Keep going.
And you mentioned something about like the cosmic joke of our immortal life. I think of that more as like a preparation period. Like I'm not universalist where everybody has the same destination in the afterlife necessarily. One of the previous callers said something about the Christian Bible study. I think, it depends on the denomination what their approach to the Bible is. And, of course, in any religion, you'll have believers who are more or less honest or sinful or even knowledgeable about their own beliefs.
Okay.
But to get into my argument here, and I kind of see this as sort of a background for belief in God, although that's not what I'm trying to argue here. But I kind of see, what reasons do I have to believe in religion? I think, to a certain extent, it's rational to believe other people and other traditions. Why would they bother going through the centuries with these beliefs? Cosmological things like who started the Big Bang, if there was something like that. Again, you said, I'm posing the question as a who, but...
Well, I'm a little confused, actually, because...
Yeah.
You said you were going to argue for the existence of a soul, and that it wasn't necessarily... You weren't going to necessarily argue for the existence of God, and yet the first couple things you pop off are the argument from popularity, which is why would they believe these things for so long, to which the answer is because they didn't know any better. Yeah. And then the cosmological argument, which is one of many, arguments that have been formally presented that are all logically flawed at some level.
Right.
Whether it's, the anthropic principle or teleological. I mean, if you want to go down that road, we can, but there are a bunch of callers waiting. We only got 20 minutes left, so if you want to just get to the souls one, that'd be great.
So really, I was just going to say those are sort of my own ways to move on from the basic point here, which is I did not create myself, but I believe I have a spirit, so therefore I have to look elsewhere. So my argument as far as the spirit itself or the soul...
Hey, I got to pause you again, John.
Yeah.
And I do this for a reason, and it's because if there's a point of contention early on in a discussion, and I sit here and let you get all the way to the end, by the time we get back to it, you've developed from it. Right. So you said that you didn't create yourself, and you believe you have a soul. Okay, right. I agree. You didn't create yourself. I think we'd all be in agreement that you are the product of your mother and father. Mm-hmm. And the second thing that you said, where you believe you have a soul, if you're going to start off with that as a presupposition, you've kind of already set yourself up to argue in a circle.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I draw that from the argument that I'm about to go into.
Oh, okay. So you just stated the conclusion up front. Go ahead.
Well, so what are you defining? What's your definition of a soul?
So, my friend pointed out that I'd probably have to be pretty good with that. I think it's the non-material, self-conscious aspect of your being that incorporates free will and reasoning, like the mind.
Okay, but we already know that the brain's responsible for reasoning.
Well, we know that at least what I would say, the soul makes use of the brain.
Oh, you think?
And draws from our perceived the knowledge from our senses.
So the soul is the non-material part of your being that uses your brain.
Yeah.
Okay. What reason do you have for thinking that even exists?
For the soul.
Because I'm curious, because in a lot of ways I could say that a soul is the non-material part of this cup that keeps the water in.
Right. So
I already know that function's done by the cup. So what justification do I have for adding a soul as a non-material, non-demonstrable aspect of this cup that does the function that we already know the cup does?
Well, you could say that it never acts on its own behalf. But then we get into the argument for perception of mind in other beings, this hypersensitive agency detection device theory of mind.
Yeah.
But the point I wanted to get to is that I think in our own consciousness, the fact that we have an understanding of what, even discussing this with you, the fact that I say the word soul or spirit and include these other things, consciousness and free will, I think just the fact that we have an understanding of what they mean sort of proves that we have some non-physical element.
Really?
That can convey to us the fact that there is meaning there.
So, John, the fact that when I say unicorn, you understand what it means? Does that mean unicorns exist?
No, but here's
why. All right,
why.
so that debunks what you just said, I think, right?
Well, here's why you believe you... Well, so with a unicorn, basically, you have the image of a horse...
No. All right, we could pick something entirely different. What we're talking about is we've defined a term, and it has entered the public consciousness as a meme. That doesn't point to whether or not that doesn't tell us whether or not it points to anything that actually exists.
Well, here's
you can
what
do
I'm saying.
the unicorn model.
As an example.
You can do
that,
the unicorn.
That represents
John.
things that we do know the meaning of: a horse, a body, a shape, a dimension, length, width, volume, mass, whatever. But all these other things are things that we know of that are not spiritual. Right, but when I say spirit or soul, there's no non-material, or there's no material things that add up and convey the meaning. Like
Which is why we had you define it at the beginning, because when you say spirit or soul, I have no idea what you're talking about until you define it. All I know is that spirit and soul are words used by people to describe a number of things, and they all mean it slightly differently, which is why I have this huge problem with the word spirituality, because it's a useless term. So we had you define soul as what it is, and you gave us a definition. That's why I have an understanding of what you're talking about. It's not because it points to something real.
But tell me why you understand free will.
Why I understand free will?
How
I don't
does
know.
that convey meaning
Probably
to you?
because I was taught the concept and have debated it a number of times.
Yes, but why did the original people who developed the concept come up with that concept?
Well, they're describing the limitations of behavior.
That's very vague.
We make up words.
Will.
We
to
make
have a
up
will. Like, where does that where do we derive that from?
Desire?
It's a brain state.
How is it a brain state? You haven't identified a gene that makes that happen. You haven't pointed to the exact fabric of the brain.
John, you don't have to identify a gene to know that something's a brain state. What you have to do is use an EKG.
No, see, you're arguing from the same sort of abstract points that you're accusing me of arguing from.
What? Sorry, what?
You're using the same sort of abstract points that you're accusing me of by saying brain state.
There's nothing abstract about a brain state.
No, it's not. It's not abstract at all. The fact that we don't completely understand it doesn't mean that we cannot test and identify discrete electrochemical brain states. We do it all the time.
But we can never prove the direct relationship between every one of those and a behavior.
So what?
So it's incomplete. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it proves the
So you're saying you're making
you
a great big argument from ignorance,
else.
that since we don't know everything, you can then posit something else that we don't know, and it suddenly becomes viable. Sorry, that doesn't work.
Okay, let me try to sort of reiterate my explanation there. It's not the fact that I'm pointing out this other alternative, the soul or spirit or free will, reason. What I'm saying is the fact that we can get a meaning from words like free will and consciousness shows that we have those things.
No, it doesn't.
No,
it doesn't. We give the words meaning. We have invented the words and